He threw his mother out of his wedding in front of everyone, never knowing that decision would slowly destroy everything he believed he owned. The wedding hall smelled of flowers and expensive perfume, but to her it felt suffocating. She stood near a pillar, quietly watching guests admire the decorations, the lights, the happiness that seemed borrowed rather than real. Her son avoided her eyes all evening, and that silence hurt more than any insult. When he finally shouted for her to leave, his voice wasn't just loud. It was cruel, rehearsed, as if he had been waiting for the right moment. People gasped. Some looked away, others stared at her with pity. She didn't speak because words would have betrayed the years of discipline she had built inside herself. She walked out slowly, every step heavy with memories. Outside, she felt the night air hit her face, sharp and unforgiving. Sitting in her car, she remembered teaching him to walk, holding his hand so he wouldn't fall. That night, she realized she had been holding his hand all his life, even when he no longer needed or wanted it. Back home, the walls felt closer than ever. She poured herself a glass of water and couldn't stop her hands from shaking. Memories flooded her mind without permission. The night his father died, and she promised herself she would be both parents. The year she worked double shifts, coming home exhausted, but smiling so he wouldn't feel guilty. The birthdays where she bought one gift for him and none for herself. She had taught him manners, values, and respect, or so she believed. Yet somewhere along the way, he had learned entitlement instead. As dawn approached, she sat on the edge of her bed and accepted a painful truth. Loving someone too much can sometimes teach them the wrong lesson. The phone rang the next morning while she was making tea. His tone was cold, practical. He said he needed the property papers urgently. Not once did he mention the wedding. Not once did he ask if she was okay. She felt a strange calm settle over her as she listened. When she ended the call, she stared at the cupboard where she kept the documents, the result of decades of sacrifice. Opening it, she ran her fingers over the envelope and then closed the door again. That simple act felt like reclaiming a part of herself she had given away long ago. When he arrived later, his frustration filled the room. He spoke fast, blaming stress, his wife, the wedding chaos. She listened, her face unreadable. Then she spoke about humiliation, about standing alone while strangers watched her heartbreak. She didn't accuse. She didn't shout. She explained that calm unsettled him more than anger ever could. When she told him respect mattered more than inheritance, he laughed bitterly and stormed out. She cried after he left, not because she regretted her words, but because standing your ground often hurts the most when you're finally doing the right thing. Days turned into weeks. She stopped checking her phone every few minutes. Instead, she filled her time with things she had postponed for years. Morning walks, old friends, quiet afternoons with books. Slowly the heaviness in her chest began to lift. She heard through relatives that his marriage was tense. Arguments over money, control, and power became frequent. She stayed silent, understanding that interference would only delay the lesson life was trying to teach him. One evening, he returned unexpectedly. He looked tired, older somehow. His confidence had cracks now. He spoke about sleepless nights, constant fights, and a feeling of emptiness he couldn't explain. She listened without interrupting. When he asked again about the property, her response was steady, unchanged. She told him love without respect was just control disguised as care. This time he didn't argue. He left quietly, carrying something heavier than disappointment. Realization. After that night, silence settled between them like a wall neither spoke about, but both felt. Weeks passed without calls, without messages, without excuses. She learned to live inside that silence. At first, it was painful, like learning to breathe with one lung. But slowly, it became peaceful. She reorganized her house, donating old things, throwing away memories she no longer needed. She repainted the room he once slept in, choosing colors she liked. Not once chosen to please a child who was now a stranger. Every brush stroke felt like reclaiming territory. In quiet moments, guilt tried to creep in, whispering that a mother should always give, always forgive. But she reminded herself that giving without limits had brought her here. Somewhere far away, her son was learning the cost of choices he once made easily. His marriage, once displayed like a trophy, began to crack under its own weight. The woman he married admired power more than partnership, control more than care. Arguments became routine. Money turned into a weapon. He realized too late that the same attitude he had used against his mother was now being used against him. Each fight echoed her words in his mind. Words he had dismissed as emotional manipulation. Late at night, sitting alone in his apartment, he thought about the wedding, about her silent exit, about how she hadn't begged. That memory haunted him more than any argument at home. One afternoon, he showed up again, unannounced. She noticed he stood outside for a long time before knocking. When she opened the door, she saw hesitation in his eyes, something she hadn't seen since he was a child, afraid of admitting a mistake. He tried to talk casually at first, commenting on the house, the weather, avoiding the real reason he came. She let him speak. When he finally admitted he was struggling, that nothing felt stable anymore, she invited him in. She listened, not as a rescuer, but as an equal. For the first time, he didn't ask for anything. That absence of demand spoke louder than apologies. Their conversation slowly changed. He began asking questions instead of making statements. He asked how she managed life alone for so many years, how she stayed strong after his father died, how she endured loneliness without turning bitter. She answered honestly, not romantically. She told him about fear, exhaustion, and the moment she nearly gave up. He realized strength wasn't dominance. It was endurance. Each visit stripped away a layer of arrogance he didn't know he carried. Eventually the topic he feared most surfaced again. The property. This time his voice wasn't demanding. It was cautious, almost ashamed. She told him clearly that the property was never a punishment or a reward. It was a responsibility. She explained that inheritance was not a right earned by birth, but a trust earned by character. If one day she felt he was capable of protecting not just land but people, then the papers would mean something. Until then, they were just paper. He nodded, understanding for the first time that power without values was hollow. Months later, news reached her that his marriage had officially collapsed. He didn't come running immediately. When he did, it wasn't for shelter or money. He came to sit, to talk, to reflect. He admitted he had become someone he didn't recognize, someone who confused control with strength. He apologized again, this time without fear of losing something in return. She accepted it slowly, carefully, knowing forgiveness didn't erase memory. Trust would need time, consistency, and humility. In the end, there was no dramatic reunion, no tears in the rain, no sudden miracles, just two adults learning how to rebuild something broken by pride. She didn't win by denying him property. She won by teaching him dignity. And he didn't lose inheritance that day. He lost entitlement and gained something far more valuable: understanding.